Opening, calm, reflective tone. Walk alone, rise alone, win alone. These aren't just words to sound powerful. They're a code, a way of living. Because one day, you'll realize that walking alone isn't a punishment, it's your initiation into strength. It's where you stop waiting for others to save you, and you start saving yourself. Shift. Tone deepens. Intimate and personal. You see, being alone doesn't mean being lonely. Loneliness is emptiness that depends on others. Solitude, on the other hand, is power. It's sovereignty over yourself. Most people fear silence because, in silence, there are no distractions left to hide behind. No validation, no noise, no applause, just you. And that's terrifying, isn't it? Because in that quiet, you hear the truth you've buried under other people's opinions, under comfort, under fear. Reflective pause, invitation for self-awareness. When was the last time you sat with yourself without reaching for your phone, without filling the silence with noise? When was the last time you asked, "Who am I?" when no one's watching? That's where the warrior's journey begins, not in the crowd, but in the mirror. Rise in tone, Stoic declaration. A true Stoic warrior understands. If your happiness hangs on someone else's approval, you'll always live like a puppet. So you cut the strings. You stand in solitude not to prove you don't need anyone, but to prove that nothing outside you controls your peace. In that stillness, something powerful begins to grow self-respect. You stop begging for recognition. You stop chasing applause. You realize that calm doesn't come from control. It comes from surrendering the illusion that you ever had it. Example. Relatable image. Think of iron being forged in fire. It doesn't become stronger by avoiding the flame. It becomes unbreakable because of it. Your solitude is that fire. Every judgment you face, every rejection, every quiet night you spend rebuilding yourself, it's all shaping your character. That's why the Stoics say, don't pray for an easier life. Pray for the strength to endure a hard one. Tone softens. Emotional connection. I know it's not easy. The world praises connection, validation, constant attention. It tells you that being alone means something's wrong with you. But what if being alone is where you finally meet the real you? What if the silence you fear is the exact place you find freedom? Reframing solitude as empowerment. To walk alone is not to reject the world, it's to stop fearing it. It's to build such a solid foundation within yourself that no storm can move you. You still love, you still connect, but you don't depend. Because dependence is slavery, and sovereignty is peace. Philosophical, close, reflective, and resolute. So when life gets quiet, don't rush to fill it. When no one claps, don't stop walking. Because in those moments, something sacred is happening. Your strength is being forged in silence. Your character is being written in solitude. And your destiny is waiting for you on the road you walk alone. Walk alone. Rise alone. Win alone. Not because you hate the world, but because you've mastered yourself. Opening, calm, reflective tone. The greatest battles are never fought in the open. They happen in silence inside your own mind. That's where strength is either built or destroyed. Most people think discipline means waking up early or working harder. But the real discipline, the Stoic kind, starts somewhere much deeper. It begins in how you think, how you react. Because here's the truth. The world outside doesn't make or break you. The world inside does. Tone deepens. Analogy introduced. Think of your mind as a fortress. Every thought, every decision, every moment of self-control is a stone placed in its walls. When you resist the urge to complain, you add a stone. When you act with integrity, even when no one will know, you add another. When you choose discipline over comfort, brick by brick, decision by decision, you build something unshakable. Not to hide from the world, but to meet it with calm strength. Question to engage viewer. Ask yourself, what kind of fortress have you been building? One made of excuses and distractions? Or one made of resilience and truth? Because whether you realize it or not, you're building something every single day. Even doing nothing is a form of construction. It's just building weakness instead of strength. Shift to self-responsibility. Stoic reasoning. The Stoics never blamed fate or other people for their suffering. They understood that life will always test you through pain, through loss, through betrayal. But the test isn't about what happens. It's about how you respond. That's why Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Stop blaming, stop explaining. The moment you do that, you start reclaiming power. You can't control the weather, but you can control your reaction to the storm. You can't control other people, but you can control your own integrity. You can't control the outcome, but you can control the effort you put in. That's the foundation of your fortress. Self-control, self-respect, self-command. Personal reflection, relatable example. Maybe you've had those days when everything seems to go wrong. You wake up late, someone insults you, plans fall apart, and you just want to explode. But then, there's a moment, a small space between what happens and how you respond. That's your power. If you can master that space, if you can pause, breathe, and act from reason instead of reaction, you win a silent victory that no one else sees. And that's where real strength is born. Tone rises, emotional resonance. The world celebrates loud success titles, fame, but the Stoic celebrates invisible victories, the ones that happen inside. When you choose not to lash out, not to gossip, not to quit, no one applauds you for them. No one notices. But those small moments are the reason why, when chaos comes, you don't fall apart. Illustrative metaphor. Everyday discipline. Think of it like training a muscle. Every act of restraint, every act of honesty, every act of consistency strengthens it. You might not feel it today, but one day, when the storm hits, you'll be grateful you trained. Because while others panic, you'll stand still. While others crumble, you'll endure. While others look for someone to blame, you'll simply act calm, clear. That's not luck. That's inner architecture. Broader reflection. Moral perspective. You see, life will never stop testing you. Temptation, comfort, and distraction. They give you the chance to build. Every time you say no to an impulse, yes to your higher self, you shape something timeless within you. It's not about perfection. It's about persistence, placing one more stone each day, no matter how small. Closing. Powerful, declarative ending. So build your fortress. Build it in silence. Build it when no one claps. Build it when no one believes in you. Because someday, when life turns violent, when the winds of chaos blow, that fortress will stand unshaken, and so will you. Remember this. Strength doesn't come from the noise of the crowd. It comes from the quiet victories of the soul. Walk alone, rise alone, win alone, and let your inner fortress speak for you without a single word. Opening, calm, and steady tone. Everyone talks about power, but most people misunderstand it. They think power means control. Control over others, control over outcomes, control over how people see you. But that's not power. That's dependency wearing a crown. True power is quiet. It's invisible. It's the ability to remain grounded when the world shakes around you. It's walking through chaos without letting chaos walk through you. Transition, bringing the listener closer. Have you ever noticed how quickly people lose themselves the moment they're criticized or ignored? One bad comment, one rejection, one person not clapping, and suddenly their entire confidence collapses. That's not strength. That's attachment disguised as ambition. The Stoics understood this long before us. They taught that power isn't measured by how much influence you have over others, but by how little others can influence you. Reflection, inviting introspection. Think about it. How much of what you do each day is driven by the need to be seen, to be liked, to be validated? How many times have you compromised your peace just to appear strong or to win approval from someone who wasn't even watching? That's not mastery. That's slavery to perception, to ego, to fear. Rising tone. Introducing the Stoic definition of power. Real power begins the moment you stop performing. The moment you realize you don't need a stage or an audience to be great. You just need alignment between your actions and your principles. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Power is doing the right thing even when no one notices. It's staying calm when provoked, honest when tempted, disciplined when tired, kind when no one is kind to you. That's the kind of strength no one can take away because it doesn't depend on applause. Example, relatable and visual. Picture a storm at sea. The wind howls, waves crash. Everything around you is chaos. Most people panic, they grasp, they scream, they look for someone to save them. But the Stoic? He's the one who stands still at the center of the storm. Eyes calm, mind clear. He can't control the storm, but he can control his ship. That's power. Not dominance, not pride, but composure, the ability to govern yourself when everything around you falls apart. Contrast power versus ego. Ego loves to make noise. It wants recognition, validation, followers, status. But power, real power, doesn't need to announce itself. It just is. You don't see the sun bragging about its light. It shines because that's what it does. In the same way, the Stoic shines through conduct, not performance. You don't need to prove your strength to anyone. Strength that's real proves itself through time, not through noise. Deep insight, internal control as freedom. The truth is, when you stop needing others to validate you, you become untouchable. No insult can define you. No praise can inflate you. You move from being reactive to being intentional. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." Freedom isn't doing whatever you want, it's doing what's right regardless of how it feels. And that's the hardest part, isn't it? Acting by principle when emotions demand revenge, comfort, or approval. But that's where mastery lives, in the space between impulse and action. Story tone, human connection. Maybe you've had moments like that. Someone disrespected you, and your blood boiled. Everything in you wanted to react, to shout back. But you didn't. You paused. You breathed. And in that silence, you won a war no one else could see. That's the battle of the Stoic, the inner one. No medals, no trophies, no witnesses. Just quiet victories that build unshakable strength. Reframing. What power truly gives you? Power isn't about control, it's about stability. It's about being the person who doesn't crumble when plans change, when people betray you, when life turns unfair. Because let's be honest, it will. Life will test you in ways you can't predict. But every test is asking you one question. Can you remain yourself when everything else falls apart? That's what defines true power, not the world's approval, but your ability to stay aligned with your values. Building to a climax. Declarative tone. So stop chasing applause. Stop begging for validation. The moment you do, you'll feel something incredible: peace. A peace that doesn't shake when people misunderstand you. A confidence that doesn't depend on being right. A strength that's not built on noise, but on stillness. You'll walk differently, speak differently, because you'll finally understand control isn't out there. It's in here. And when you master yourself, the world loses its grip on you. Closing, reflective and powerful ending. Remember this. Arrogance is loud, but power is silent. Arrogance needs an audience. Power doesn't care who's watching. The Stoic doesn't seek control over others. He seeks control over himself, his emotions, his impulses, his choices. Because that's the only control that's truly real, the only power that never fades. So when the world grows chaotic, when people misunderstand your silence, when others chase the spotlight, you stay centered. You act with virtue. You hold your ground. You remain unshaken. That's real power. Not given by others. Not proven through noise. but born within and carried quietly like a flame that never dies. Opening, calm, introspective tone. There comes a moment in your journey when people start saying, "You've changed." They don't mean it as a compliment. What they really mean is, "You've stopped being who we wanted you to be." And that's when you know you're growing. Because growth always threatens comfort. Not just yours, but everyone else's. When you choose silence over noise, discipline over drama, focus over distraction, people start to feel uneasy. They can't read you anymore. Your calm makes their chaos louder. Your peace exposes their restlessness. So they label you cold, distant, arrogant. Let them. That's the price of becoming real in a world addicted to pretending. Transition. Reflective and relatable tone. Have you noticed how uncomfortable people get when you stop explaining yourself? When you stop defending your decisions? When you stop giving them access to your thoughts and emotions every second? Silence terrifies those who depend on noise to feel alive. But silence, that's where you find yourself. That's where you stop existing for others and start living for truth. Developing idea. The price. Make no mistake. The path of integrity isn't comfortable. You will lose things, people, approval, comfort, even certainty. You'll lose the easy version of life, the one built on being liked. But comfort is the enemy of character. The moment you stop needing comfort to feel safe, you become dangerous not to others, but to the systems that depend on your weakness. That's the price. You'll walk alone more often. You'll spend nights wondering if you're being too harsh, too distant, too different. You'll question if it's worth it, this solitude, this distance, this constant misunderstanding. And the answer is yes, because the cost of authenticity will always be lower than the cost of regret. Rising tone, shift to reward. The reward? Freedom. Not the kind that comes from doing whatever you want, but the kind that comes from doing what's right, even when it costs you everything. Freedom from the need to be understood. Freedom from chasing validation. Freedom from bending yourself just to fit into someone else's small idea of you. It's the kind of freedom that no one can grant you and no one can take away, because it's built on principle, not popularity. Example, relatable scenario. Think about it. Maybe you've had a season like that. You stopped going out as much, started reading, reflecting, building something silently. And suddenly, the calls stopped coming. People said you were different. They didn't realize you weren't disappearing, you were rebuilding. While they were chasing noise, you were constructing peace. While they were counting followers, you were counting days of consistency. You weren't lost. You were just walking a path they couldn't see. Deepening philosophy. Stoic reasoning. The Stoics called this the path of virtue, choosing what's right over what's easy, principle over pleasure, truth over comfort. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Why? Because only the weak demand to be understood at every step. The strong simply act. They live by their values and let time do the explaining. You see, doing what's right often feels like punishment at first. It isolates you, tests you, and strips away everything superficial. But that's exactly what makes you free. Because when you no longer fear loss, you gain yourself. Contrast society's illusion versus real growth. The world teaches you to chase comfort, applause, agreement, but comfort is a cage made of gold. Every time you choose convenience over conviction, you trade a piece of your soul for temporary peace. And when the applause fades, when the crowd moves on, you'll be left wondering, did I live true to myself, or did I just perform for approval? The Stoic Warrior doesn't perform. He acts with purpose, not to impress, not to prove, but because it's right. That's where real freedom begins, in doing what's right, quietly, consistently, without asking for permission. Tone softens, emotional connection. You'll learn something powerful once you stop explaining yourself. Not everyone deserves access to your thoughts. Not everyone has earned the right to understand your silence. Sometimes silence is the answer. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Because silence has gravity, it draws truth to the surface. It reveals who can stand with you when words are gone and who only love the noise. Reframing. Conclusion builds clarity. Yes, the price of this path is high. You'll lose comfort. You'll lose company. You'll even lose your old self. But what you gain is worth far more. Clarity, strength, sovereignty. You stop reacting to life and start responding to it. You stop being pulled by emotions and start being guided by principles. You stop living to be seen and start living to be true. That's freedom. That's the reward. Final tone. Declarative ending, like a manifesto. So when they say you've changed, smile. They're right. You've stopped living for comfort. You've stopped being controlled by fear. You've stopped explaining yourself to those who never listened. Let them misunderstand you. Let them talk. Because your silence is not weakness, it's mastery. The price is solitude. The reward is freedom. And once you've tasted that kind of freedom, you'll never trade it for comfort again. Walk alone if you must, but walk in truth, because that's the only path worth walking. Opening, calm, reflective tone. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from exhaustion, but from mastery. It's the silence after you've faced your storms and realized you no longer need to fight everything. You've seen chaos. You've felt the weight of doubt, anger, and fear. But instead of running, you walked through it. And when the noise finally settled, you discovered something powerful. The storm never truly ended. You just learned to carry your calm within it. That's what the Stoics called the center, your unshakable core. The still point inside you that doesn't move, no matter how loud the world gets. Transition, bringing the viewer in. Have you ever watched a hurricane on the news? There's destruction everywhere, winds tearing trees apart, waves crashing, chaos unfolding. But at the very center of that storm, there's total calm. That's the eye. Still, clear, untouched. That's what the Stoic mind strives for, not a life without storms, but a life where your peace doesn't depend on the weather. Developing the idea, Stoic control versus emotional chaos. Most people spend their lives chasing calm outside of themselves. They wait for people to behave, for plans to go right, for circumstances to feel safe. But that's not peace. That's dependency. Real peace is when you stop demanding the world to be quiet before you can think clearly. You carry the silence within you. You walk through noise without letting it own you. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That's what the eye of the storm is. Not freedom from pressure, but freedom under pressure. Reflective tone, personal connection. There was a time when I thought peace meant having no problems, no stress, no conflict, no uncertainty. But the older I got, the more I realized life doesn't give you peace. You build it. You build it by facing discomfort until it no longer scares you, by walking through pain until it loses its power over you, by training your mind to stand still even when your heart races. And one day, something changes. You don't get angry as easily. You don't panic as quickly. You start to notice you've become the calm one in the room full of noise. That's not luck. That's evolution. Rising tone, describing the transformation. You see, after the inner battles, after you've confronted your own fears, the noise inside fades. What replaces it is not emptiness, but clarity. You begin to realize you already have everything you need within you. You don't chase approval because your worth is internal. You don't seek control because you've accepted uncertainty. You don't fear solitude because you've learned to stand with yourself. This is not the stillness of fatigue, it's the stillness of power. The kind of calm that doesn't collapse at commands. Example. Relatable life moment. Maybe you've felt it too. Someone tried to provoke you, but this time, you didn't bite. You saw the anger coming, like a wave, and instead of fighting it, you let it pass. You breathed. You stayed centered. And afterward, you thought, wait, that didn't control me this time. That's the eye of your own storm. That's self-mastery. And it's one of the rarest victories a human being can achieve. Deepening philosophy. Stoic reasoning. The Stoics believed that strength wasn't about resisting pain, but transforming it. When life hits you, it's not asking you to break, it's asking you to see what's unbreakable. Every hardship is an invitation to find your center again. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it. You are that rock. The world can rage, scream, demand, but you stay still. Not because you don't feel, but because you've learned how to feel without losing your form." Shift to empowering insight. Tone lifts with inspiration. You carry your center with you. Wherever you go, it goes too. That's why you don't fear change anymore. Because peace isn't in the place, it's in the person. You can sit in traffic and still breathe calmly. You can face loss and still choose gratitude. You can hear criticism and still know your worth. When you reach that level of presence, no one can truly take your peace. Because your peace isn't built on outcomes, it's built on understanding. Contrast, the illusion of calm versus the real thing. There's a kind of stillness that looks peaceful, but isn't. It's the stillness of avoidance when you shut down to escape. But the Stoic stillness is different. It's alive, it's aware. It's the kind of calm that sees everything clearly and still chooses restraint. True calm isn't numb, it's powerful. It's what allows you to respond with wisdom instead of react with emotion. It's not weakness. It's the highest form of strength. Reframing, finding fulfillment from within. When you reach that space inside you, when you no longer need the world to be quiet, to feel at peace, you become unstoppable. Because then, nothing owns you. Not the praise, not the insult, not the outcome. You become complete. Not because life got easier, but because you got steadier. You learned to stop fighting the storm, and instead, you became the calm inside it. Closing. Powerful, reflective conclusion. So the next time life feels chaotic, remember this. You don't need to escape the storm. You need to find your center within it. Let the noise rage. Let the waves crash. You just stand still. Breathe. Watch. Choose your response. That's what mastery looks like. That's what freedom feels like. And when the storm finally fades, you'll realize it never defeated you. It refined you. Because the warrior's peace is not the peace of surrender. It's the peace of command. The calm that follows victory over oneself. Carry that center wherever you go. And no matter what happens outside, you will always remain. The eye of the storm. Opening, calm, focused tone. You've built the foundation. You've trained your mind. You've fought your inner battles. Now comes the hardest part, action. Because all the philosophy in the world means nothing if it never leaves the page. You can read, plan, meditate, visualize. But until you act, nothing changes. The Stoics knew this well. They didn't just think their principles, they lived them. And that's what separates a philosopher from a warrior. The willingness to move. Transition. Inviting reflection. How many times have you told yourself, "I'll start when I'm ready," but readiness never really comes. You wait for perfect timing, for confidence, for signs. And the truth is, those signs don't come until after you've begun. Perfection is a disguise for fear. It's your mind's way of saying, "I'd rather stay safe than fail." But the Stoic doesn't chase safety. He chases truth. He moves when it's right, not when it's comfortable. Developing idea. Stoic filter of action. Every action passes through a filter. The Stoic filter. Ask yourself 3 questions before you move. Is this right? Is it within my control? Does it align with my values? If the answer is yes, then you act. You don't need permission. You don't need applause. You don't even need certainty. The only validation you need is your own integrity. Example. Relatable scenario. Think about the last time you hesitated. Maybe it was speaking up for yourself. Maybe it was starting that business, ending that relationship, or saying no to something that drained you. You knew what the right action was, but fear whispered, "What if you fail?" And so you waited. Here's the truth the Stoics understood. Waiting for courage doesn't bring courage. Action creates it. Rising tone, motivating moment. You don't become confident before doing hard things. You become confident by doing them. You don't get clarity by thinking, you get it by moving. Even a wrong step teaches more than standing still ever will. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, stop thinking about it. Philosophical expansion, redefining failure. Now, here's where many people get it wrong. They think failure means they did something wrong. But to the Stoic, failure is feedback, it's information. You act, you learn, you adjust, you rise. Every setback becomes a teacher. Every mistake, a mirror. You don't measure yourself by outcomes. You measure yourself by alignment. Did you act from virtue? Did you choose integrity over comfort? If yes, then you've already won, no matter the result. That's the difference between external success and inner victory. One can be taken away, the other can't. Reflection, emotional and human tone. Think about a warrior training for battle. He doesn't wait for a day with perfect weather. He trains in the rain, in the mud, in the exhaustion, because he knows the real fight won't wait for ideal conditions. Life works the same way. If you wait for everything to align, you'll miss your moment. Sometimes the door opens only once, and hesitation is the only thing that closes it. Contrast, internal versus external control. The Stoic doesn't waste energy on what he can't control. He focuses on what he can, his effort, his attitude, his response. You can't control outcomes, but you can control the quality of your choices. You can't control what others think, but you can control how you act. You can't control fate, but you can meet it with strength. That's why Stoicism isn't about passivity, it's about precision. Every action becomes intentional, deliberate, and meaningful. Reframing perspective, practical wisdom. So when you fail and you will don't break, pause. Ask yourself, what did this teach me about me? That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Because the Stoic doesn't seek a life without failure. He seeks a life without wasted lessons. Failure becomes the grindstone that sharpens the mind. Pain becomes the forge that tempers the will. Each mistake becomes a stepping stone toward mastery. Tone builds, empowering realization. You start to see that real value doesn't lie in what you achieve, it lies in who you become while achieving it. Every act of courage, every disciplined decision, every silent struggle, it's shaping you into someone unshakable. The Stoic doesn't act to win applause. He acts because the action itself is the victory. He doesn't wait for fate to bless him. He becomes the kind of person fate can't destroy. Closing, powerful conclusion, cinematic tone. So, act. Even if you're scared, even if it's messy, even if no one understands. Because in the end, the courage to act is rarer than talent, rarer than knowledge, rarer than luck. Anyone can plan a better life. Only a few have the discipline to live it. Don't wait for perfect timing. Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for permission. Ask the Stoics 3 questions. Is it right? Is it within my control? Does it align with my values? If the answer is yes, move. Let your choices speak louder than your doubts. Let your failures become your teachers. Let your life become the proof that wisdom isn't found in thinking, but in doing. Because the moment you act not someday, but today, that's when philosophy becomes power. That's when virtue becomes visible. That's when you stop existing. Opening, calm and reflective tone. There's a kind of strength most people never learn. The strength to stop. We live in a world that worships constant motion. Work harder. Move faster. Keep grinding. Never pause. But sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Not because you've given up, but because you're conserving your fire for the right moment. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They didn't just act, they acted wisely. They knew that even a warrior doesn't swing his sword without aim. transition, engaging the viewer. Think about this. How many times in your life have you pushed forward just because you were afraid of slowing down? You kept running, not because you were going somewhere, but because stopping made you feel like you were losing. But the truth is, speed without direction isn't progress, it's panic. And silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. Developing idea, redefining pause. To the untrained mind, stillness looks like surrender. But to the Stoic, it's something entirely different. It's the art of gathering strength before the next strike. When the archer draws his bow, he pauses. That moment before release, still, focused, deliberate, is where precision is born. That's the difference between a shot in the dark and a strike that lands exactly where it's meant to. The same goes for you. When you pause intentionally, you're not retreating. You're sharpening your aim. You're recentering your power. Example, relatable situation. Maybe you've been in a season of waiting. You've done the work. You've put in the effort, but things aren't moving. Nothing seems to be happening. It's easy to feel like you're stuck, like life has left you behind. But pause doesn't mean paralysis. It means potential. The seed that lies still beneath the soil isn't dead, it's gathering the energy to break through. The quiet phase before movement isn't a waste, it's preparation. Stoic reasoning, insight on timing and restraint. Epictetus once said, "No great thing is created suddenly." That's because wisdom understands the rhythm of life, the time to act, the time to wait, and the courage to know the difference. Even in battle, a Stoic warrior doesn't attack blindly. He studies the field. He watches. He waits. He acts only when reason, not impulse, tells him to. That's what makes his strength unshakable. His actions are never desperate. His silence is never empty. His restraint is not weakness, it's mastery. Contrast, reacting versus responding. The average person reacts. They let fear push them. They let frustration pull them. They think slowing down means losing ground. But the Stoic responds. He doesn't rush to speak, doesn't rush to fight, doesn't rush to prove. He pauses, not to avoid life, but to align with it. Because the truth is, impulsive motion wastes energy. It drains you. Strategic stillness, on the other hand, builds it. It's the pause that prepares precision, the silence that strengthens command, rising tone, empowerment through control. To win alone isn't just about defeating external challenges. It's about mastering your inner rhythm, knowing when to move and when to wait. It's about holding your position while everyone else scrambles, about standing still in a room full of panic and realizing you are the calm in the storm. That's the true meaning of self-sovereignty. When you don't let chaos dictate your pace, you become untouchable. While others rush, you prepare. While others react, you respond. While others lose themselves in noise, you rise in silence. Example, historical or modern context. Think of Marcus Aurelius, facing the collapse of an empire, endless wars, and betrayal from within. He didn't react with rage or desperation. He paused. He observed. He wrote. He grounded himself in principle before he made a move. That's what allowed him to lead with clarity instead of fear. That's what allowed him to remain calm while everyone else was losing their minds. And that same power exists within you. You may not lead an empire, but you lead yourself, and that's the highest kingdom there is. Reflection. Personal application. Ask yourself, when was the last time you paused, not out of exhaustion, but out of intention? When was the last time you said, "I'll wait, not because I'm scared, but because I'm wise"? Most people confuse noise with progress, but look closer. The loudest person in the room is often the least centered. The fastest mover is often the least prepared. The Stoic knows patience is not delay, it's control. Building climax. Connecting inner peace and power. Strategic stillness is the art of carrying your center into chaos. You learn to breathe when others break. You learn to listen when others shout. You learn to conserve your fire until the right moment to strike. When the time comes, you move not from emotion, but from clarity. Not to impress, but to fulfill purpose. Not because you're forced to, but because you choose to. That's what it means to act with virtue. That's what it means to live like a warrior of the soul. Closing. Powerful, cinematic ending. So the next time life feels still, ask yourself instead, am I being delayed or am I being prepared? Because sometimes the universe isn't saying no, it's saying, not yet. Stillness is not surrender, it's strategy. Restraint is not weakness, it's wisdom. And patience is not inaction, it's power under control. Remember this, anyone can swing wildly in chaos, but it takes a master to stand firm, to breathe. And then, when the time is right, strike once, with purpose, and win. That's what it means to win alone. Not by overpowering others, but by mastering yourself. Because when you can stand calm while the world trembles, you've already won. Opening, reflective, cinematic tone. The higher you climb, the quieter it gets. At the base of the mountain, there's noise, cheers, laughter, the hum of the crowd. But as you rise, that noise begins to fade. Not because you've done something wrong, but because few people are willing to keep climbing with you. That's the nature of the summit. It's always lonely. And the truth is, most people don't walk for truth. They walk for applause. They move not because they're called, but because they're watched. Their courage depends on who's looking. Their purpose depends on who's clapping. But the Stoic warrior walks differently. He walks by principle, not by praise. Developing the theme, the loneliness of rising. As you ascend in life, whether it's in wisdom, in success, or in strength, you'll notice something strange. The air gets thinner. The number of people who truly understand you gets smaller, and the silence that once scared you becomes your companion. At first, you'll miss the crowd. You'll wonder why the people who once cheered for you now seem distant or even resentful. But this is not a loss, it's a filter. Because not everyone who starts with you was meant to finish with you. Some followed the sound of your rise, not the truth of your path. Some admired your courage until it made them uncomfortable. And some loved you most when you were still easy to understand. That's the price of walking by principle. You outgrow their approval. Question to the viewer. Reflection moment. Let me ask you, how many of your choices today are truly yours? How many decisions do you make because they're right, not because they'll be liked? Most people are addicted to applause without even knowing it. They measure progress by attention, not by integrity. They fear being misunderstood more than they fear being false. But the Stoic learns to reverse that. He understands that being true to himself is worth more than being accepted by others. Expanding with a vivid image. Picture this. You're climbing a steep mountain, step after step. In the beginning, you're surrounded by voices, encouragement, advice, validation. But as you climb higher, those voices start to vanish. You look around, and it's just you, the wind, and the weight of your breath. That's when the real journey begins. Because at the summit, there's no applause. There's no audience. There's only truth, your truth. Transition. Principle versus popularity. The crowd loves convenience. It cheers for you, as long as you reflect what they already believe. But the moment you choose integrity over conformity, you become a mirror they no longer want to look into. The Stoic warrior doesn't chase comfort. He chases clarity. He doesn't bend his values to fit the room. He shapes the room by standing still in his truth. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire surrounded by flattery, yet he wrote, "Be indifferent to applause. Be indifferent to blame. Let virtue be enough." That's power. Not the power to dominate others, but the power to remain yourself when the world tries to rewrite you. Example. Modern perspective. Maybe you felt this too. You stop sharing certain dreams because people don't understand them. You stop explaining yourself because no explanation seems enough. You realize that your growth makes others uncomfortable. Not because you've changed for the worse, but because you've stopped performing for their approval. That's when you must decide. Will you shrink to fit back in, or will you keep walking upward? Because at some point, living by principle means walking alone, not out of pride, but out of purpose. Contrast the illusion of applause. Applause is addictive. It makes you feel alive for a moment, but empty afterward. It's like drinking salt water, you keep consuming it, thinking it will quench your thirst, but it only makes you thirstier. Principle, on the other hand, nourishes you quietly. It doesn't make noise. It doesn't sparkle, but it builds something lasting. Peace. The Stoic doesn't need a stage. He doesn't need recognition to validate his choices. He knows that walking the right path, even in silence, is victory enough. Inner dialogue. The weight of ownership. When you live by principle, you accept full ownership of your life. You don't hide behind excuses. You don't say, "They made me do it," or "I had no choice." If you fail, it's your failure. If you succeed, it's your success. That's what the Stoics called true freedom, to stand accountable for your own actions without shifting blame. Because a person who blames others is still a prisoner of them. To walk by principle is to say, if I fall, it's on me, but it was my step. It is plies. She shot is fan the never works, and candidate is on. It not as having severed of the learn as was asses then. Where everything will bless lung, and subscribes who will blessed win from sever. And that kind of ownership breeds strength no applause could ever give. Rising tone, reclaiming dignity. Every step you take without applause strengthens your character. Every decision you make that no one sees builds your foundation. Every moment you choose integrity over comfort, you ascend another level. Yes, the summit is lonely, but it's also peaceful. It's where you stop needing to prove and start simply being. It's where silence no longer feels empty, but sacred because it belongs only to those who earned it. Closing. Powerful and reflective ending. So when the cheers fade, when your circle gets smaller, when your silence unsettles those who once applauded you, smile. You haven't lost your way. You've simply risen beyond the noise. Remember this, the Stoic warrior does not live for recognition. He lives for alignment with virtue, with truth, because applause ends when the lights go out. But principle stays with you through storms, through solitude. And at the summit, when you look back on your path, you'll realize something profound. You didn't walk alone out of arrogance. You walked alone out of authenticity. That's what it means to win alone. Not because the world turned its back on you, but because you stopped needing it to face forward. Opening, calm, thoughtful tone. And factiglers indup you. As you walk further on your path, something becomes clear. Not everyone is meant to walk beside you. And that's not a tragedy. It's a truth. In a world that praises connection above all else, we often forget the beauty of selective companionship. You will meet few people who truly understand your values, your silence, your mission. When you do, honor them. But remember this, gratitude does not mean dependency. The Stoic warrior knows companionship is a gift, not a crutch. Connection is sacred, but never meant to replace your own strength. Transition. Engaging reflection. Let me ask you something. Have you ever met someone who just gets you without you needing to explain who you are, why you live the way you do, why you've chosen the harder, quieter road? Those people are rare. They're the kind of souls who walk with purpose, who understand silence, who don't demand that you shrink to make them comfortable. When you meet one, you don't need to hold on tightly. You simply walk together for as long as your paths align. And if someday your paths part, you let them go with peace. Developing idea. Rarity of true alignment. At higher altitudes, there's less oxygen and fewer voices. The higher you rise in clarity, discipline, and purpose, the fewer people can breathe the same air. That's not arrogance, it's reality. Because most people live at a frequency of comfort and convenience. They avoid the hard truths you now live by. They want ease, not evolution. They want validation, not virtue. But occasionally, you'll meet another who walks by principle. Someone who doesn't flinch when silence falls. someone who values peace over popularity. That's a rare bond, formed not by need, but by mutual integrity. It's not built on gossip or distraction, but on shared understanding. Reflection. What true friendship means. The Stoics believe that friendship is not about constant presence, but about shared virtue. Seneca once said, "A friend is another self," but he never said you must lose yourself to keep that friend. True connection doesn't demand compromise of character. It inspires it. It doesn't bind you, it liberates you. When you meet such people, you don't own them, you honor them. You grow together, but you stand strong apart. Because maturity means loving deeply without losing yourself. Contrast, dependence versus freedom. Most people confuse closeness with dependency. They think love means attachment. They think friendship means constant validation. But when you depend on someone for your peace, you give away the keys to your soul. The Stoic way is different. It's learning to share life without surrendering your sovereignty. It's knowing that love is strongest when it's chosen freely, not clung to out of fear. You can stand beside someone without leaning on them. You can care deeply without losing your center. You can walk together without forgetting how to walk alone. Example, relatable and emotional. Maybe you've had this happen. You start growing, setting boundaries, valuing your time differently, and suddenly some people pull away. They say you've changed. They call you distant, detached, cold. But here's the truth. You haven't changed. You've simply stopped shrinking. You've stopped lowering your standards to be accepted by those who never intended to rise with you. And yes, it's lonely at first, but then something shifts. You realize that you no longer crave their approval. You crave peace, truth, alignment. That's when you're truly free. Deep insight, freedom within connection. Freedom doesn't mean isolation. It means the ability to love without losing yourself. It's being able to walk beside someone without fear of walking alone. When your sense of self is rooted in virtue, not validation, you become unshakable. You no longer need to fit in because you've found where you stand. You no longer chase belonging because you belong to yourself. And ironically, that's when real relationships begin. Not the ones built on convenience, but the ones built on authenticity. Because when you stop performing, you finally attract people who see the real you. Philosophical layer, maturity and expansion. There's a powerful paradox here. The freer you become. When you no longer depend on others for identity, you meet them with openness, not expectation. You listen more, demand less. You give because you want to, not because you need to. That's the maturity Stoicism teaches. To love from fullness, not from emptiness. To expand, not to shrink. So don't coerce yourself into boxes where you no longer fit. Don't soften your edges just to stay close to people who fear your growth. Expand to your true size, even if it means standing apart for a while. Example, a personal reflection tone. When you begin to grow, people often tell you to stay humble. But what they really mean is, stay small enough so I can still feel comfortable around you. True humility isn't about shrinking. It's about staying grounded as you grow. It's about knowing your worth without demanding recognition for it. It's walking with others out of love, not out of fear of being alone. And if they can't walk with you, you bless them and keep moving. Because love doesn't demand company, it demands truth. Closing. Poetic and reflective ending. So yes, companions will be few, but those few will be gold. Cherish them, but never depend on them for your peace. Remember this, to need less is to love more purely. To walk freely is to connect more deeply. And to stand alone without fear. That's when you finally learn what real freedom feels like. When you no longer shrink to be accepted, you begin to live at your true height. And from that height, you see clearly. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to expand. That's the Stoic way. To walk with grace, to love without attachment, to honor connection without losing your soul. Because in the end, the rarest bond is not with others. It's the one you form with yourself. Opening, reflective, calm tone. Real love begins the moment you no longer need it to define your worth. Most people don't realize this. They think love means merging, giving everything, losing themselves in someone else. But the truth is, the Stoic way teaches us something deeper. To love is not to lose yourself, it's to express your highest self through choice, not dependency. When your peace no longer depends on approval, when your value no longer depends on validation, you unlock a new kind of freedom. The freedom to love without fear, to give without losing balance. Transition, engaging reflection. Let me ask you something. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that you started to forget who you were? You wanted to please them, to prove your worth, to be enough for them to stay. But over time, you began to notice you weren't loving freely. You were performing. That's not love. That's attachment disguised as devotion. And when you live like that, you're no longer giving, you're trading. Trading your peace for attention. Trading your truth for acceptance. Trading your freedom for the illusion of safety. Developing idea. What true freedom in love means. The Stoics remind us, your worth is not determined by anyone else's perception of you. It exists inherently steady, unshakable, self-contained. Epictetus said, "Want nothing outside of yourself, and you will be free." That doesn't mean living cold or detached. It means loving from wholeness, not from emptiness. Because when you love from fullness, your care isn't a chain, it's a choice. You can hold someone close without clinging. You can give deeply without being drained. You can serve others without losing your center. That's what it means to love like a Stoic. To give, not because you need to, but because it's who you are. Example, relatable story tone. Maybe you've seen it in your own life. You work hard to help others, family, friends, people you care about, but somewhere along the way, you begin to feel invisible, unappreciated, even used. And you start to wonder, if I stop giving, will they still value me? That question reveals the problem. Your giving was no longer pure, it was a plea for recognition. But real strength is when you give, and you could stop, when your kindness flows from strength, not from guilt. You give not to be seen, but because giving aligns with your values. When you love like that, rejection can't destroy you, because your sense of worth was never in their hands to begin with. Deep reflection, boundaries as self-respect. True freedom in love requires boundaries. And boundaries are not walls, they're definitions of dignity. Most people fear boundaries because they think it means being cold or distant. But a Stoic knows the opposite is true. Boundaries are what make love sustainable. They protect the balance between compassion and self-respect. You can say no and still be kind. You can walk away and still wish someone well. You can serve others without surrendering yourself. Seneca once wrote, "He who is kind must first be strong, because without strength, kindness turns into submission. Without boundaries, love becomes dependence." Contrast, love of power versus power of love. Modern culture often confuses the two. Love of power versus the power of love. One tries to control others. The other controls only itself. When you're free within, you don't chase control, you embody peace. You don't manipulate to feel secure, you stand still and certain. You don't demand others to fill your emptiness, you bring fullness wherever you go. That is the highest form of love, rooted in virtue, not validation. Example, modern illustration. Think of the calm person who helps others quietly, without needing applause. They don't post it online. They do what's right because it's right. That's Stoic love in action. It's grounded, steady, and self-sufficient. This kind of love inspires others without enslaving them. It uplifts without trapping. It connects without consuming. And the paradox is, when you no longer depend on being loved, you become far more capable of loving fully. Philosophical layer. Strength in giving. The Stoics never saw love as weakness. They saw it as the highest expression of discipline. To love someone deeply while remaining sovereign within yourself. That's mastery. To give generously while expecting nothing in return. That's power. To serve others without losing your peace. That's freedom. Because love that doesn't demand is unbreakable. It's not a performance. It's a presence. Reflection. Practical Stoic lens. Before you speak, ask, am I seeking validation or offering value? Before you give, ask, am I giving from fullness or from fear? Before you love, ask, is this love expanding me or diminishing me? These questions realign your compass. They help you remember that peace is an inside job, not a prize someone else gives you. Your life is not measured by how many people approve of you, but by how many times you chose integrity over insecurity, virtue over validation, truth over attachment. Closing, powerful cinematic ending. When you separate your worth from other people's approval, you unlock a rare kind of strength, a calm, radiant independence. You no longer chase love, you radiate it. You no longer beg to be seen. You live in a way that cannot be ignored. You no longer cling to people, you connect through purpose. To love and serve without losing yourself. That is the freedom the Stoics spoke of. Because the moment your peace depends only on your principles, you become untouchable. So, love deeply, but remain free. Give fully, but stay grounded. And remember, the purest love is not the one that needs to be returned, but the one that asks for nothing and still chooses to give. That is not weakness. That is strength. That is sovereignty. That is the Stoic way. Opening, grounded and powerful tone. Passion fades. Excitement burns out. Motivation comes and goes like the tide. But discipline, the quiet, consistent force behind every lasting success, stays. Most people think victory belongs to those who feel inspired. But the Stoics knew the truth. Victory belongs to those who act without needing to feel inspired. Because real strength isn't built in bursts of passion. It's built in the invisible rhythm of your habits. The small, daily choices that no one sees. The ones that build your inner fortress. Transition. Engaging question. Ask yourself this. How many goals have you abandoned simply because the initial spark faded? How many times did you start with fire, only to stop when the flame dimmed? That's what happens when we chase novelty instead of mastery. The Stoic Warrior knows your emotions are guests, not rulers. You can let them visit, but you don't hand them the throne. Developing the idea. Consistency over passion. There's a dangerous myth in modern culture that passion is everything. Follow your passion, they say. Do what excites you. But passion is a spark, not a structure. You can't build a fortress out of fireworks. What you need is a system, a discipline so solid that even on your worst days, you still move forward. You wake up not because you feel like it, but because it's who you are. That's what the Stoics called character. I see not emotion, not inspiration, but the ingrained identity of someone who does what's right, no matter how they feel. Example, relatable scenario. Think of the person who goes to the gym only when they're motivated. They'll see small results, then stop when life gets busy. Now think of the one who shows up even on the days they don't want to. The one who trains quietly, steadily, without applause. Who do you think will still be standing a year from now? That's the Stoic posture of victory. You don't wait to feel ready, you act. Because your system makes you ready. Reflection, building momentum. Momentum is sacred. Once you have it, guard it like your life depends on it, because it does. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you add a brick to your fortress. Every time you delay what matters, you weaken its walls. Momentum doesn't demand perfection. It demands protection. That means protecting your focus, your energy, and your time from the silent enemies of progress. Fake busyness, comfort, and distraction. Contrast. Let's talk about one of the most common traps today. The illusion of productivity. You're busy all day, emails, messages, notifications, endless tasks. But at night, you realize nothing meaningful actually moved forward. You worked, you were active, but not aligned. That's how the world steals your fire, not by attacking it, but by distracting it. The Stoic Warrior knows this game. He guards his attention like a soldier guards a gate, because he understands your attention is your life. What you give it to determines who you become. Philosophical insight, systems as identity. Epictetus said, "If you wish to be good, then act as one." Simple, yet profound. You don't think your way into discipline, you behave your way there. That's why systems matter. Systems turn good intentions into inevitable results. They take willpower out of the equation. Because if your structure is strong, you don't need to negotiate with yourself every day. You don't ask, "Should I do it?" You do it because that's the law of your inner world. Example, a Stoic day in action. Imagine this. You wake up early, not because you're a morning person, but because you promised yourself that your first victory of the day is rising with purpose. You train your body, not for aesthetics, but for strength of mind. You read, not to collect quotes, but to cultivate wisdom. You work, not for praise, but for mastery. Each action reinforces the next. Each repetition forges identity. And before you know it, discipline stops feeling like effort. It becomes your nature. That's what the Stoics meant when they spoke of virtue as habit. You live rightly until living rightly feels like breathing. Insight. But remember, even a fortress can fall if left unguarded. The biggest threat isn't defeat, it's distraction. Every notification you check, every meaningless argument you join, every time you chase validation instead of vision, you chip away at your inner walls. Guard them. Protect your rhythm. Don't let the world dictate your tempo. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are disturbed by something external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but your estimation of it. So guard your estimations. Guard your attention. Guard your time." Practical wisdom. Keep it simple. Systems don't have to be complicated. In fact, simplicity is strength. A small set of clear rules followed daily beats 100 goals you never act on. Wake up, move, think, reflect, act, repeat. Because in the end, success is not built in grand gestures, but in small, invisible acts of consistency. Closing, empowering, cinematic ending. Passion will make you start, but discipline will make you unstoppable. The Stoic Warrior doesn't rely on feelings to rise. He relies on his systems, his standards, his inner architecture. He knows that storms will come, motivation will fade, and the world will tempt him with comfort disguised as progress. But he stands firm. Because he doesn't live from emotion, he lives from principle. He doesn't move from impulse, he moves from intention. He doesn't chase victory, he embodies it. So don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait for the spark. Build your system, guard your focus, and keep your momentum alive. Because in the end, the one who wins is not the one who burns brightest, but the one who keeps walking long after the fire fades. That's the Stoic way. Not driven by passion, but sustained by purpose. Not chasing victory, but becoming it. Opening, calm, reflective tone. When the noise of ambition fades and the applause of the world grows quiet, what remains? Not the trophies, not the titles, not even the memories of our victories. What remains is who you became, the quiet strength you carried through the storms, the wisdom you left behind through your actions, and the example you gave simply by living with integrity. That's legacy, not something you chase, but something you build. One disciplined day at a time. Transition, engaging the viewer. You see, most people want to make an impact. They want to be remembered, to be respected, to be seen. But very few understand that legacy isn't about being known, it's about being consistent. It's about the person you choose to be when no one's watching, the way you respond when life tests you again and again. The Stoics taught that greatness isn't found in moments of passion, but in years of quiet endurance. They didn't measure a man by his success, but by his steadiness. And that steadiness, the kind that doesn't break with time, is what defines a legacy. Developing idea, the Stoic foundation of legacy. The Stoic path has always been about permanence in the impermanent. Virtue, wisdom, service. These are the pillars that survive time. They don't fade with trends, they don't depend on fame, and they don't need recognition. Marcus Aurelius never asked to be remembered as an emperor. He asked to be remembered as a man who tried to live rightly, because he knew titles end, but virtue endures. So when you think about your own life, ask yourself, what am I building that will still matter when I'm gone? Example, relatable reflection. Maybe it's not about building an empire. Maybe it's about raising your children with integrity. Maybe it's about showing kindness where others choose anger. Maybe it's about mentoring one person who carries your wisdom forward. Legacy doesn't require a spotlight. It requires alignment between what you believe and how you live. Because every time you choose honesty over ease, discipline over comfort, and compassion over cynicism, you leave a mark far deeper than applause ever could. Philosophical insight. The Stoic concept of amor fati, and here's the secret. Your legacy isn't built only in your victories. It's also built in your losses. The Stoics called this amor fati, the love of fate. To love not only what happens to you, but to use it to turn every limitation, every wound, every ending into the raw material of growth. You can't always choose what life gives you, but you can always choose how to respond. That choice, the calm acceptance, the strength to adapt, becomes your signature, your legacy. Think about it. The people we admire most aren't those who had perfect lives. They're the ones who endured imperfect lives with dignity, who turned pain into wisdom and setbacks into lessons that outlived them. Example, modern and relatable. Maybe you lost something, someone you loved, a dream you fought for, a plan that collapsed. You could let it break you, or you could let it shape you. When you embrace what happens, not with bitterness, but with purpose, you become untouchable. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what can I build from this? That's amor fati. That's strength in its purest form. The power to turn fate into fuel. Developing reflection. Consistency across time. But here's what most people forget. A legacy isn't a single act, it's a rhythm. It's the consistency of character over time. Anyone can be strong for a day, but can you be steady for a decade? Anyone can be wise in theory, but can you live wisely when everything falls apart? Legacy isn't built in moments, it's carved through years. It's a slow process, like a craftsman shaping stone. Each day adds a line, a texture, a detail to the sculpture of your life. The question is, are you shaping that stone consciously or letting it be eroded by distraction, ego, and fear? Insight. The Stoic approach to relationships and influence. As you mature on this path, something changes. You become more selective about who you let close. You stop seeking crowds and start seeking character. Because you realize not everyone deserves your energy. Not everyone understands the language of purpose. And that's okay. You learn to teach not by preaching, but by example. By how you speak under pressure. By how you treat people who can't repay you. By how you live your values when no one's watching. That's how the Stoic teaches silently, powerfully, through presence. Contrast. Many confuse legacy with ego. Ego wants to be remembered. Legacy wants to serve. Ego says, look at me. Legacy says, learn from me. Ego craves permanence through attention. Legacy achieves permanence through contribution. And when you serve from virtue, you no longer need to worry about how long people remember you. Because truth doesn't die when the name fades, it lives through those you've influenced. Closing, cinematic ending. So, what will your legacy be? Not the things you owned, not the noise you made, but the consistency you lived by, the strength with which you met hardship, the peace you carried through chaos. Legacy is not about how loud your story is. It's about how true it remains. So love your fate. Turn your losses into lessons. Serve quietly. Teach by example. And above all, stay steady. Because one day, long after the world forgets your name, the ripples of your virtue will still move through time, through the lives you touched, the strength you inspired, and the calm you left behind. That is immortality the Stoic way. Not in monuments, but in meaning. Not in memory, but in the consistency of a life well lived. Opening, calm, reflective tone. Not every victory is meant to be seen. Not every success deserves a spotlight. And not every step forward comes with applause. The truth is, many of the greatest victories in life happen in silence. They happen when no one's watching, when there's no recognition, when it's just you, your discipline, and your purpose. The Stoics understood this better than anyone, because to them, the real measure of progress wasn't what the world could see. It was who you became when no one was looking. Transition, engaging the viewer. We live in a time where everything is public. Every achievement posted, every opinion broadcasted, every moment documented. But think about this. When was the last time you did something good and didn't tell anyone? When was the last time you worked hard for something quietly, without needing others to see, to validate, or to reward you? If you can still do that, you're already stronger than most. Because in the Stoic way of life, the highest victories are invisible. Not because they don't exist, but because they don't need to be seen. Developing idea. Invisible victories. The world teaches us to chase noise. Be seen, be known, be admired. But the Stoic teaches us to chase depth. Some victories are loud medals, promotions, applause. But others are quiet. Self-control, restraint, patience, endurance. You didn't argue back when insulted. You stayed calm when provoked. You kept working when others quit. You forgave when you could have sought revenge. Those are victories too. In fact, they might be the most important ones because they shape your soul. They build the kind of strength that doesn't need an audience to exist. Example, relatable reflection. Imagine a tree growing in a forest. Above the ground, it looks still. But below the surface, its roots are expanding. Deeper, stronger, unseen. That's what your progress often looks like. You think you're standing still, but deep down, something is taking root. Patience, character, wisdom. And one day, when the time is right, the growth becomes visible. But by then, the roots are already strong enough to hold through any storm. Insight, patience, and long-term growth. The Stoics called this endurance patience in action. Not the kind of patience that waits idly, but the kind that works silently, steadily, purposefully, because every small step counts. Every quiet morning you rise early. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you're training the invisible part of yourself. The Stoic doesn't rush results. He trusts the process. He knows that growth hidden beneath the surface is what sustains everything above it. The roots come before the fruit. Reflection, the illusion of fame. In the modern world, we've confused visibility with value. We think if it's not public, it's not real. If no one knows, it doesn't count. But look closer. The sun doesn't post its light. The ocean doesn't announce its power. The mountain doesn't need to speak to prove its height. True greatness doesn't demand attention. It commands respect, quietly. And the Stoic understands this truth. Your peace, your virtue, your inner progress. Not for display, but for preservation. Example, the invisible discipline. No one will see the nights you stayed up working while others slept. No one will know the battles you fought against your own laziness, pride, or fear. No one will clap for the times you chose silence over argument or restraint over revenge. But that's okay, because the Stoic doesn't live for recognition. He lives for alignment with principle, with purpose, with peace. Your progress doesn't need witnesses to be real. It only needs your integrity. Deep insight. Why silent victories matter most. The victories you win in silence are the ones that last the longest, because no one can take them away from you. They aren't built on approval, they're built on strength. They don't depend on applause, they depend on consistency. Think of it like this. The world rewards appearance, but life rewards truth. Appearances fade, but truth, discipline, and inner strength, they compound over time. So while others rush for quick validation, you stay the course. You build roots. You grow in silence because you understand. The deeper the roots, the higher the tree can grow. Philosophical layer, redefining success. Seneca once said, "I judge you not by how you appear to the world, but by how you appear to yourself." That's the real metric of success. Did you live by your principles today? Did you control what was within your power? Did you resist what was beneath you? If so, you've already won, even if no one noticed. Because every day you stay consistent, you strengthen your fortress from within. And that's how Stoics measure progress. Not by noise, but by stillness. Not by the crowd, but by conscience. Example, a modern Stoic perspective. Maybe you're working on something right now that feels invisible. A business that hasn't taken off. A habit that hasn't yet shown results. A healing process no one understands. Keep going. The Stoic doesn't chase speed, he honors direction. While others race for recognition, you're learning endurance. And one day, when your roots break the surface, the same people who doubted your silence will stand in awe of your strength. Closing, cinematic, inspiring tone. So yes, be patient, be disciplined, be quietly relentless. You don't need the world to see your progress. You just need to become it. Because the truth is, the loudest victories often die fast. But the silent ones, they echo for a lifetime. So keep growing, even when no one notices. Keep building, even when no one claps. Keep walking, even when no one joins. Because the Stoic knows, to win in silence is the highest form of mastery. To remain calm while growing stronger. That's the real victory. The roots are invisible, but they're what hold the entire tree. So don't worry if no one sees your progress. Keep watering your soul. Keep strengthening your foundation. And when the world finally looks your way, they'll call it success. But you'll know it was patience all along. That's how you win in silence. That's how you live like a Stoic. Opening, calm, grounded tone. Time has a way of wearing things down, not with an earthquake, but with a drip. Promises don't usually shatter, they erode. Habits don't explode, they fade. And if you don't notice the fade, you'll wake up one day far from the life you meant to live. A Stoic doesn't fear time. A Stoic respects it. Because the real test isn't how loudly you start, it's how faithfully you continue. Transition? Let me ask you, when was the last time you renewed your commitment on purpose? Not a New Year's resolution, not a dramatic speech. A quiet, daily yes to what matters. Because erosion is subtle. You skip a workout just today. You answer emails instead of doing the deep work. You drift into distractions that look productive but push nothing forward. One day off becomes two. Two becomes a week. The slope is gentle until it isn't. Developing idea. Renew the vow daily. Treat your priorities like vows you renew each morning. A simple ritual. 2 minutes. No theatrics. What matters today? Why does it matter? Tie to values. What is the smallest proof I'll deliver? Make it measurable. That's it. Not inspiration, intention. You don't need fireworks. You need a recommitment loop that outlasts mood swings. At night, close the loop. Did I move the few? Where did I drift? What will I fix tomorrow? Small, honest check-ins beat grand plans that collect dust. The goal drift problem. Correct early. Pilots use a 1-degree rule. Miss your heading by a sliver now, and you'll land miles off course later. Life works the same way. A tiny drift unchecked becomes a detour. So build early correction into your week. Weekly drift audit. 15 minutes. What did I do that looked busy, but wasn't mission critical? What one thing would have mattered more? Stop divided by. Start divided by continue. One behavior to drop, one to begin. one to sustain. Re-aim the compass. Ask, what would future me thank me for by Friday? Correction is cheaper than comeback. Do it early. Depth over display. Resisting fake momentum. We live in a world where busy is a costume and visible passes for valuable. The Stoic standard is different. Depth over display. Not how much did people see, but how much did I move the core? Here's a simple filter. If it makes noise but doesn't move the needle, distraction. If it feels slow but compounds over time, depth. Examples. Health. 20 deliberate minutes every day beats 2 heroic weeks and a long relapse. Work. 90 minutes of undistracted deep work beats 8 hours of reactive inbox sprints. Relationships. 1 undivided weekly conversation beats 100 likes. Shallow efforts chase applause. Deep efforts build roots. Long game and generational lens. Measure choices against long arcs, not dopamine spikes. Ask, will this still matter in 10 years? Would my child or future self thank me for this? Does this add to the person I'm trying to become, or just to my notifications? Legacy isn't a statue. It's a pattern. It's how you treat people when no one watches. It's systems that keep working when you're tired. It's seeds you plant knowing you might never sit in their shade. Personal angle. The quiet contract. I used to wait for big waves of motivation. When they came, I did everything. When they left, I did nothing. What changed my life wasn't more hype. It was a quiet contract. Keystone habits. Move daily. Think on paper. Do the hard thing first. Lead measures. Focus on actions. I control minutes of deep work, workouts completed, not outcomes I don't. Non-negotiables. A short list that survives bad days. None of this is glamorous. All of it is durable. Practical playbook. Anti-erosion protocol. Here's a Stoic framework you can start today. Daily recommit. 2 minutes AM. What? Why? Smallest proof. 1 big move before noon. Spend your best energy on the most meaningful task. 90-minute deep block, phone away. Depth beats scatter. Guardrails. 2 time blocks for messages. No multitasking. Default no to meetings without a clear outcome. Evening review. 5 minutes. Stop divided by. Start divided by continue. Note drift. Reset next tiny step. Weekly waypoints. Choose 3 big rocks. If everything else slips, these don't. Quarterly compass check. What to prune. What to double down. Simple. Repeatable. Forgiving. Anti-erosion. Mindset. Patience with teeth. Stoic patience is not passivity. It's persistence with a plan. It says, I'll go slow if slow is what gets me there every time. It trades fireworks for compounding. It trades public sprints for private, steady miles. Remember, the roots grow before the harvest. Let your roots deepen where no one sees, so your life stands where others fall. Reframe setbacks. Maintenance, not miracle. You will drift. Everyone does. That's not failure, that's physics. The question isn't, did I drift? It's how quickly did I notice and return? A missed day is a data point. 2 is a trend. 3 demands an intervention. Return fast. Reduce the step. Keep the chain alive. Closing. Clear. Declarative finish. The true test of time is not intensity, it's integrity repeated. Renew your vow today. Protect momentum from fake busyness. Choose depth over display. Aim your choices at a future you'll be proud to inhabit, and at people who may never know your name, but will live better because you kept your word. You don't need louder goals. You need longer obedience. You don't need a new passion. You need proof daily. Small, relentless. The world crowns starters. Time crowns finishers. So recommit. Correct early. Go deep. Think in decades. Let erosion meet a wall it cannot break. That is how a Stoic beats time. Not by outrunning it, but by outlasting it. Opening, calm, firm, introspective tone. Power reveals more about a person than failure ever will. Because when life gives you influence, success, or authority, that's when the true test begins. It's easy to stay humble when no one is watching you. It's harder when people start listening, admiring, following. That's when the ego starts whispering, "You've earned this. You're above them now." The Stoics warned us, power without discipline is decay. They didn't reject power. They refined it. They saw leadership as stewardship, not domination. Because power is not ownership, it's responsibility. Transition. Engaging question. So, let me ask you, what happens when you finally get what you've been working for? The recognition, the influence, the respect? Do you rise above the chaos or above the people? Do you build others up or build walls around yourself? Because the real challenge isn't reaching the top. It's remaining grounded once you do. Developing idea. The Stoic definition of power. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of the world's mightiest empire, wrote to himself every night, reminding his soul to stay humble, to stay human. He ruled millions, yet began his mornings reminding himself, "Today you will meet arrogance, envy, and ignorance. Stay kind, stay just, stay calm." That's what Stoic power looks like. It's not loud. It's not cruel. It's the kind of strength that doesn't need to prove itself, because the Stoic understands. Power isn't about control over others. It's about control over yourself, your impulses, your reactions, your pride. Example. Relatable scenario. Maybe you've seen this before. Someone starts from nothing, humble, focused, hardworking. They rise through effort, gain success, and then they forget where they came from. Their words get sharper, their patience shorter, their empathy thinner. Success didn't change them, it revealed them. Because power magnifies what's already inside you. If your core is solid, power strengthens you. If it's weak, power cracks you open. Insight. Hold your shape under pressure. The Stoics had a phrase, "Keep your shape." It meant, no matter what happens around you, wealth, praise, chaos, don't lose your inner form. Think of a sword. Bend it too far, and it breaks. The same goes for character. Bend it for ego, for anger, for dominance, and you'll lose your edge. So, when power increases, your discipline must increase with it. When your voice grows louder, your listening must grow deeper. When you gain authority, your humility must expand to match it. That's how you hold your shape. Reflection. The art of disciplined compassion. There's a kind of compassion that's weak, the kind that says yes to everything, afraid to disappoint. And there's a kind that's disciplined, the kind that helps without enabling, that listens without surrendering. The Stoic practices disciplined compassion. They care, but not at the cost of truth. They serve, but never from guilt. One side. They know when to speak softly and when to stand firm. True humility isn't weakness, it's self-mastery in motion. It's the ability to serve without seeking approval, to correct without condescension, and to lead without losing yourself in the process. Example. Modern context. In the modern world, power can take many forms. Maybe it's financial success. Maybe it's having a platform, a following, a business, a team. Whatever form it takes, it's a test. The question is, can you handle the attention without needing it? Can you lead without feeding the ego? Can you stay kind when people expect arrogance? Because the strongest people don't need to be feared, they choose to be respected. And that respect comes from consistency, not intimidation. Philosophical layer. The Stoic concept of stewardship. The Stoics viewed leadership not as control, but as custodianship. You don't own power, you borrow it for a time. And how you use it determines whether it builds or destroys. Epictetus, once a slave, said, "If you wish to be powerful, then master yourself. Even the emperor and the servant shared that same truth. Because real leadership isn't hierarchical, it's moral. You are the steward of what you've been given. Your influence, your resources, your knowledge, your reach. Your job is not to dominate, but to elevate. Contrast arrogance versus stewardship. Arrogance says, I made it because I'm better. Stewardship says, I made it so I can serve better. Arrogance silences feedback. Stewardship invites correction. Arrogance demands loyalty. Stewardship earns trust. And when criticism comes, as it always does, the Stoic doesn't get defensive. He listens, filters, and adjusts where it's true. He's strong enough to be wrong and calm enough to correct himself. Reflection, humility, and mastery. The longer you walk this path, the more you'll realize humility isn't something you have at the bottom. It's something you need at the top. Because the higher you climb, the easier it is to lose sight of the ground. And the ground is where your roots are, where your clarity, your empathy, your purpose live. When you forget that, power becomes poison. When you remember it, power becomes purpose. Closing, cinematic, powerful tone. So, when your influence grows, stay steady. When your voice gets louder, speak softer. When your reach expands, let your humility expand with it. Because true strength isn't in domination, it's in discipline. True power isn't in control, it's in self-command. And true leadership isn't about ruling, it's about serving. Be the kind of person who can hold power without being consumed by it, who can lead without losing your center, who can stand tall, yet bow deeply to truth. That's how a Stoic handles power, with humility, with compassion, and with control over himself first. Because the greatest victory is not conquering others. It's staying unchanged when power tempts you to forget who you are. Hold your shape. Stay grounded. Lead well. That's the Stoic way. Opening, calm, reflective tone. Every journey, no matter how far it takes you, eventually comes full circle. And when it does, you realize something powerful. You were never chasing success. You were sculpting character. The goal was never to win the world. It was to master yourself, to walk through fire and come out whole, to face pain and still choose virtue, to live so deeply aligned with your principles that even if the world misunderstands you, you still stand at peace. This is what the Stoics called victory. Not applause, not perfection, but inner congruence, becoming who you were meant to be in accordance with virtue. Transition. Reflective question to engage viewers. Have you ever noticed that the hardest parts of your life were the ones that revealed your truest self? The breakups, the failures, the moments when you had to walk alone, they weren't detours. They were the training ground. You left comfort behind, not because you hated peace, but because you were searching for truth, for the kind of peace that doesn't depend on people, money, or status. You were building a life that felt authentic, not just impressive. And now, as the circle closes, you see it clearly. The journey was never about reaching the top. It was about becoming someone worthy of the climb. Developing idea, the purpose behind rising and winning. Every rise had a reason. Every fall had a lesson. Every victory, whether seen or unseen, was shaping you into something solid. The Stoic doesn't rise to dominate, but to demonstrate, to show what's possible when discipline replaces desire, when integrity outweighs ego, when peace comes not from escape, but from endurance. You fought hard battles, but the greatest one was never against others. It was against the weaker version of yourself. That's why the Stoic wins quietly. He doesn't need to announce his triumph, because his life is the announcement. Reflection. Reconciling solitude and community. And here's another truth. You were never meant to live completely alone, nor completely attached. The Stoic finds balance. Connected, yet sovereign. Kind, yet unshaken. You've learned to walk among people without losing your center. You've learned to share without surrendering your soul. You can love deeply without clinging and lead others without needing their approval. This is what real maturity looks like, to be part of the world without being consumed by it. Your solitude taught you strength. Your community taught you compassion. And now, you walk between them with wisdom. Example, relatable visualization. Think of yourself standing at the end of a long road. You've walked through storms. You've been betrayed, misunderstood, but you kept walking, not for applause, but for alignment, to live by principle, not by circumstance. And somewhere along the way, you realize you're no longer walking to prove anything. You're walking because this is who you are now. The discipline, the calm, the silence. They're not armor anymore. They're your nature. Insight, the acceptance of limitation. At this stage, the Stoic accepts a truth most people spend their whole lives running from, that everything is temporary. You will lose people. You will lose things. You will even lose parts of yourself you once thought were permanent. But when you stop resisting impermanence, you discover peace not in control, but in acceptance. You stop clinging and start appreciating. You stop fearing endings and start honoring the time you have. Because when you live aligned with virtue, every ending becomes beautiful. Not a tragedy, but a completion. The Stoics called it amor fati, to love your fate, to embrace the inevitable, and to find grace in what remains. Reflection, gratitude, and serenity. And so gratitude becomes your resting place. Not the loud kind that lists achievements, but the quiet kind that whispers, I'm thankful I got to live this way. Gratitude for the challenges that refined you, for the solitude that strengthened you, for the people who came and taught you, even through pain, how to love better. At this stage, life isn't about chasing more. It's about living well, with dignity, balance, and peace. You no longer measure days by what you achieve, but by how deeply you stayed aligned with who you want to be. Philosophical layer, legacy, and meaning. And when you think of legacy, you see it differently now. It's not about statues or followers. It's not about fame or monuments. Those things crumble. True legacy is a principle lived. It's the impact of your consistency, the example you leave behind, and how you carried yourself through adversity. Maybe your legacy is a child who watched you face hardship with calm. Maybe it's a friend who learned courage by watching your silence. Maybe it's someone you'll never meet who was changed by your words, your work, your way. That's the kind of legacy time can't erase. Because principles don't die, they're inherited through example. Personal tone, modern Stoic reflection. When you reach this point, something inside you softens. You no longer need to prove, defend, or explain. You've lived, you've fought, you've grown, and now you understand. Peace isn't the absence of struggle, it's the presence of purpose. The circle doesn't close in defeat, it closes in completion. You're not the same person who began this path. You're quieter, stronger, wiser, and, most importantly, grateful. Closing, cinematic ending with Stoic declaration. So when the day comes and you look back, you won't measure your life by trophies or titles. You'll measure it by moments of integrity, by how often you chose patience over pride and principle over popularity. Your life itself will be your philosophy, lived, tested, proven. And that's what it means to win the Stoic way, to rise not above others, but within yourself, to live aligned with virtue, to share without losing sovereignty, to face limits with grace, and to leave behind not monuments, but meaning. Because the greatest legacy is not being remembered. It's having lived a life that didn't need to be explained. That's the circle. That's the completion. That's the Stoic way. Opening, powerful yet serene tone. Every journey must end where it truly began within yourself. Because the greatest victory in life isn't over others, it's over the chaos inside you. The final mountain is not out there in the world. It's the one within the mountain of self-control, self-respect, and self-mastery. You climb it alone, and at the top, there's no crowd, no applause, no trophy, just silence. But in that silence, you realize this is what freedom feels like. Freedom from comparison, freedom from emotional turbulence, freedom from the need to be approved, validated, or admired. That's the real peak of solitude the Stoics spoke of. The place where your peace is no longer a hostage to anyone or anything. Transition. Engaging the viewer with a question. So, what does it mean to truly win in this life? Is it about wealth, titles, recognition, or is it something quieter, something invisible to the world, but undeniable to the soul? The Stoics would tell you this: to win is to stay centered when everything tries to pull you apart. It's to move through life without losing your shape, to live with discipline, reason, and virtue. Not once, but every single day. Developing idea, the real meaning of victory. Victory, in the Stoic sense, isn't a single moment, it's a posture. It's not a trophy you hold, it's a standard you uphold. Each morning you wake up, you stand at the front line of your own mind. The enemy is not outside, it's the old version of you. The impulsive one, the distracted one, the one seeking shortcuts and validation. And every day that you act with integrity, you win a small battle. When you choose patience over pride, you win. When you choose discipline over comfort, you win. When you choose silence over reaction, you win. The Stoic victory is not loud. It's lived quietly through consistency, through choices repeated until they become character. Example, modern application. Maybe you don't feel victorious right now. Maybe life feels heavy, like you're still climbing, still fighting, still unseen. But remember this: the Stoic doesn't measure success by how far he's gone, but by how faithfully he walks. You win every time you rise when it's easier to quit. You win every time you choose to do what's right, even when no one's watching. You win every time you refuse to let bitterness turn you cold. Because real victory is not in applause, it's in alignment, insight, freedom through self-mastery. The more you conquer yourself, the freer you become. Think about it. How many people are slaves to impulse, to anger, to ego? They think they're free because they can do whatever they want. But freedom without self-control is just another form of bondage. To the Stoic, freedom is the ability to choose your response. It's the power to remain calm in chaos. It's the discipline to keep your principles even when life tests you to the edge. That's why Marcus Aurelius said, "It is not external things that disturb us, but our judgments about them." When you master your mind, the world loses its power over you. You stop chasing outcomes. You start mastering effort. You stop seeking validation. You start living by virtue. And that's when life truly begins to feel light. Reflection. Solitude as strength. At the end of every great journey comes solitude. Not loneliness, but solitude, the kind that restores you. When you finally reach that peak of solitude, you understand. You were never meant to belong everywhere. You were meant to belong fully to yourself. You can walk alone now, not because you've withdrawn, but because you've grown. You no longer need to shout your truth. You live it. You no longer need to demand respect. You embody it. And in that quiet strength, you find something the world can't touch. Self-respect anchored in virtue. Example, personal reflection tone. Maybe people won't understand your calm. They'll mistake your restraint for weakness, your silence for indifference, your independence for arrogance. Let them. You've outgrown the need to explain yourself. Because when you've mastered yourself, you don't need validation. You live with a kind of peace that doesn't depend on agreement. You move with purpose, even when no one's clapping. You walk your path because it's yours. That's what it means to walk alone. Not in isolation, but in integrity. Philosophical layer, discipline, reason, and virtue. Every day is a rehearsal of victory. The Stoic doesn't seek to win once he seeks to live rightly again and again. It's not about what you achieve. It's about how you achieve it. Were you disciplined? Were you just? Were you kind? Did you live by principle, even when it cost you something? That's the rhythm of a Stoic life. Not driven by emotion, but guided by reason. Not ruled by ego, but anchored in virtue. And when you can live that way, every day becomes sacred. Every moment, a quiet declaration, I am in control of myself. Closing, cinematic, inspiring ending. So, when people ask what victory looks like, you don't need to explain. You show them through your calm, your steadiness, your discipline. The greatest triumph is not being celebrated by the world, but being at peace with yourself. You don't need permission to begin. You don't need applause to continue. You don't need validation to arrive. Just walk. Walk with integrity. Walk with virtue. Walk alone, if you must, but walk with purpose. Because the Stoic path is not about crowds, it's about character. Not about noise, but about nobility. And when the world fades into silence, and only your conscience remains, you'll hear it whisper back to you, you have won, not by conquering others, but by mastering yourself. Not by seeking approval, but by walking your path with courage and peace. So go now, don't wait for permission. Don't wait for applause. The next step is yours to take. Walk alone. Rise alone. Win alone. That's the Stoic way.